Most people have had the experience of explaining a problem to someone else and figuring out the answer before the other person even responds. The mirror trick is that exact phenomenon, except the other person is you, and it works even better. This video covers what actually happens in the brain when you talk to your reflection, why verbalizing a problem out loud is fundamentally different from thinking about it silently, and how 3 minutes in front of a mirror can move a problem that has been sitting in your head for days. Stay until the end, because the reason this works is more interesting than the technique itself. Before getting into the mirror specifically, you need to understand why talking out loud changes anything at all. When a problem lives entirely inside your head, your brain processes it in a compressed, shorthand way. It skips steps. It assumes context. It loops back over the same familiar grooves. Without realizing it is covering the same ground repeatedly. This is why people can spend hours thinking about something and make no progress, then explain it to a friend in 2 minutes and immediately hear themselves say something they had never consciously thought before. Putting a problem into spoken words forces the brain to linearize it. To build a sentence, your brain has to pick a starting point, sequence the information, and commit to a specific version of what the problem actually is. That process alone surfaces assumptions and gaps that silent thinking glosses over. Researchers studying this have found that people who verbalize problems during complex tasks perform measurably better than those who work through the same problems in silence. The act of speaking is not just expressing a thought. It is shaping one. There is also a second thing that happens when you speak a problem out loud, and it is less obvious. Hearing your own voice say something activates a different processing pathway than reading or thinking the same content. The brain treats auditory input and internal thought differently at a neurological level. When you hear yourself say something out loud, it registers with more weight than the same idea sitting silently in your head. That is partly why writing things down helps, and partly why saying them out loud helps even more. The externalization makes the thought feel real in a way that internal rumination does not. So talking out loud helps. The mirror adds something on top of that. When you stand in front of a mirror and speak, your brain does not entirely register the reflection as yourself. Not in the way you might expect. There is a well-documented psychological phenomenon where social presence, meaning the feeling that another person is watching and listening, changes how the brain approaches a task. Eye contact in particular activates parts of the brain associated with self-awareness and social evaluation. The brain reads eye contact from a reflection as genuine eye contact, which is why prolonged mirror gazing feels slightly uncomfortable to most people. You are triggering a social response with no social situation to apply it to. That social response is exactly what makes the mirror useful here. When you perceive that someone is listening, even if that someone is your own reflection, the brain shifts into a mode psychologists call self-distancing. Instead of being fully immersed inside the problem, you step slightly outside it. You start narrating rather than drowning. You hear yourself the way an observer would, which makes it considerably easier to notice when something you are saying does not quite add up. This is the same mechanism that makes it easier to give a friend advice about a situation than to figure out what to do when you are in the same situation yourself. Distance from a problem, even artificial distance created by a pane of glass, changes the quality of thinking applied to it. The mirror manufactures that distance without requiring you to actually remove yourself from the situation. There is also something specific that happens when the listener appears to be looking back at you without judgment. The brain relaxes its filtering. In a conversation with another person, a portion of your cognitive bandwidth goes toward managing how you are perceived. With a mirror, that portion frees up. You are less likely to edit yourself mid-sentence. Less likely to skip the part that makes you look confused or uncertain. And the confused, uncertain parts are almost always where the actual problem is hiding. The coaching effect is what most people notice after trying this for the first time, and it is the part that feels slightly strange to explain. When you externalize a problem by speaking it out loud to a perceived listener, the brain spontaneously begins generating responses to itself. This is the same mechanism behind why therapists spend so much time simply getting patients to articulate things clearly. Clarity of expression and clarity of thought are not separate processes. Sharpening one sharpens the other. When you hear yourself describe a situation to your reflection and something sounds off, your brain does not just register the wrongness and move on. It reaches for a correction. It starts coaching. People who use this technique regularly describe a consistent experience. The first minute feels awkward. The second minute feels like the problem is getting more complicated rather than less. Somewhere in the third minute, something shifts. A reframe appears. A question surfaces that reorients the whole thing. An option that felt unavailable suddenly looks obvious. This is not magic. It is the brain finishing a process that silent rumination keeps interrupting. The 3-minute mark matters because it takes time for the initial self-consciousness to settle. Most people bail out in the first 60 seconds because it feels strange to talk to a mirror. The strangeness is real, and it is also entirely predictable, because nothing in everyday life prepares you for having a serious conversation with your own face. But pushing past it is the entire point, and the people who do consistently report that the discomfort drops away faster than they expected. The technique works best with a specific structure, and this is where most people who try it once and dismiss it go wrong. Do not walk up to the mirror and start with what the problem is. That framing keeps the brain in passive mode, cataloging rather than solving. Instead, start by saying what you want to resolve by the end of the 3 minutes. Not what the problem is, but what a resolved version of it looks like. This small shift in framing tells the brain it is looking for a destination, not just taking inventory of a difficult situation. Then talk. Do not script it. Do not try to be articulate or organized. Let the sentences come out rough and incomplete, because rough and incomplete is honest, and honest is what triggers the coaching response. If you find yourself repeating the same point, say that out loud too. Noticing the repetition is part of the process. If you say something that does not sound right the moment it leaves your mouth, stay with that feeling instead of talking over it. That friction is the brain flagging something worth examining. When something comes out of your mouth that surprises you, stop and stay with it. Do not rush past it to keep the monologue moving. The surprising moments are the ones worth examining, and the reflection looking back at you makes it easier to sit in that discomfort without immediately deflecting. Most people, when they hit an uncomfortable realization in their own head, instinctively redirect their thinking towards something more comfortable. The mirror makes that harder to do, because there is a face looking back at you that just said the thing, and you cannot unsay it. One more thing worth knowing. The problem does not need to be resolved by the end of the 3 minutes. Sometimes what comes out is a clearer version of the question rather than an answer. That is still progress. A well-formed question is almost always more useful than a vague, anxious loop, and a vague, anxious loop is what most unaddressed problems become when they live too long inside someone's head without being spoken. There is a broader point underneath all of this that is worth saying plainly. Most people treat thinking as a solitary, internal activity and only bring problems to other people when they feel stuck enough to ask for help. That works sometimes, but it relies on having the right person available at the right moment, being willing to be vulnerable about something that might feel half-formed or embarrassing, and trusting that the other person has the time and attention to actually engage with it properly. Those conditions are not always available, and waiting for them means a lot of problems sit longer than they need to. The mirror technique sits in an interesting middle ground. It gives the brain the social and verbal conditions that produce better thinking without requiring another person, without the vulnerability of admitting confusion to someone whose opinion matters, and without the scheduling problem of finding the right moment to have a difficult conversation. It is also free, takes 3 minutes, and requires nothing except a mirror and the willingness to feel briefly ridiculous. Which, when you put it that way, is a very low bar for something that consistently works. The people who dismiss it without trying it are almost always the same people who have accidentally solved problems in the shower by talking through them under their breath, or who have figured something out mid-sentence while leaving a voice memo. The mirror just makes that process intentional. It gives the brain the conditions it was already reaching for and removes the part where it has to happen accidentally. If this is the kind of practical, research-backed thinking tool worth having in the feed, subscribe. There are more of them. Drop a comment with the problem you tried this on and whether it worked.